All right, welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. You are watching KUTV Primetime News. Now it's time for a discussion of the night. Is Kenya broke with everything that is going on in the country? We are seeing the bipartisan approach. The ruling party, the Kenya Kwanza government, has already selected its 7-member committee today. The Azimio has selected its committee already. Now let's find out what's up and about in the country. Tonight I am joined by Sir Charles Ochilo, that is Embakasi Constituency Development Manager, and Kelvin Minor, a political scientist, to talk about the state of the nation. Karibuni sana.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, I'll just start with, let me start from the left. Sir Charles,
Yes.
I want us to talk about the salary crisis in the country. How did we get here?
My thinking is that I think the approach that the current government is taking is the one that is bringing all these problems. Because you see, I don't know whether the subsidies before were okay, but I feel that if those subsidies were there and those things were put in place, it was making it easier for things to flow, even the revenue collection and all those things. Like now, if you check, most of us, not all of us, but most of us, are getting other method and means of like transport. If we go to work, some leave their cars behind so they don't fuel. By doing that, you find that the revenue collection on that is slightly cut, and that hence bringing the issue for the government revenue collection. And now that also makes it hard for the government to be able to pay the salaries, and
You
that's
really,
what, yeah.
all right, you really, sorry about that. You really do think it's about a government removing subsidies and now reducing its revenues?
Yeah, because you see, once you need to create a situation where everybody is using or spending, but when you put it so high and make it hard, it makes it, members find it hard to move a lot or spend a lot. And when you do that, it means you cut cost. When you cut cost, then there's no revenue. Or even if there is, it's just by a small margin.
All right.
Hence bringing all these issues.
All right, but the deputy president is on record saying that they are not able to pay salaries, public servant salaries at the moment, because they are currently paying debts that the country has.
But those debts were also being paid even before, and they were being, and the servants were being paid. It means there's something that is not being done right. Because whatever he's saying, we have not started paying the debts now. The debts have been there all along.
Yeah.
So if before they were being paid and the servants were being paid, it means there's something that is not being done correct.
Okay.
That's just my opinion.
All right. Calvin,
Yes,
what do you say about it?
I think this is a situation that has been coming. It is just that the previous regime has been trying to postpone it. And you know, some things, no matter how much you postpone them, you will get there. The issue of the government not being able to pay civil servant, it is a situation of the government saying it will no longer get loans. And therefore, what happens? You already have a deficit, right? And you're not getting the addition of what you used to get to do these things. Therefore, you have a deficit. The deputy president came on and told guys, you know, guys, what has been happening? We have loans that have matured. And therefore, what do we need to do? We need to pay the loan. So the little that we have, we first of all pay the matured loans, and then look for what you can get, pay you guys. You see, the issue of loans, if you can remember, late last year, we wanted to get a Eurobond. But what happened? Because of the election that was we were facing as a country, and the high rates that were being introduced in the euro, as a measure by the American and Western nation reaction to the war in Russia and Ukraine. Therefore, the rate at which they were offering that Eurobond, the previous Eurobond were being offered at 6% rate. They now bring in another policy that led to an increase to 12%. And the government said, no, we are not going to take that Eurobond. What does it mean? The country was anticipating $1 billion USD. Therefore means the government that is currently there got an economy that is less with $1 billion USD. And these guys have said, we are not borrowing. Therefore, it is like you're trying to fill a jerry can and you're getting an extra pipe or tap. But you say, what we do, we close this tap. Because the more we take from this tap, the more we are going to, you have to repay the loans, right? These loans, once you are given, they gain interest. And therefore, you will find out that you are paying a lot. And you know what happens? Currently, we are facing inflation as a country. Our shillings has lost around 10% to US dollar. That means we have an inflation rate of 9.1%. This is what happens. You have borrowed $1 USD, right? At the rate of maybe $1 is equals to maybe 110 billion. 110 shillings, eh? Then inflation comes in, maybe next year. The dollar rate changes. You find 1 shilling is equivalent to 150 shillings. Therefore, if you borrowed Kenyan money, 100 billion shillings, once you are paying, you will pay 150 billion. Therefore, the economy will lose 10 billion just that way by financing these loans. And this has been something that has been continuously there, year in, year out. We get loans, we are repaying loans. And now the government have decided, guys, let's do this, let us stop the loans. Let us struggle a bit, but you know, at the end of the day, we are going to fix things.
But will they keep public servants at a halt at the expense of paying loans? Because where are these servants, public servants, civil servants, going to get motivation from? Because you need motivation to go to work.
When you have a situation, currently, even if you look at the cost of living, we need what we call short-term plan. We need what we call long-term plan. Because at the end of the day, we must get to that period, transition period. And once you're in a transition, if you are good in physics during your days, you find out there is tear and wear, there is push and pull. And that is anticipated to happen. Therefore, what I would urge the civil servant and the general public is to give this government time, you see. Because at the end of the day, they need to rectify things. They need to clear some mess that it is not their doing. And therefore, they need to keep their room in order. And keeping that in order is keeping those loans in order.
Okay.
It is stabilizing the economy.
Right, Sir Charles, Calvin is saying give the government time, even in paying public servants. What's your take on that?
How long can you give? Because you see, we always leave our homes to go to work. We have to be motivated. When you tell me that we give you time, it's already 9 months. How long is the space to be given? At the same time, my friend is saying that the government halted taking loans, but now it's on record. Ruto is taking more loans, unless I'm wrong, but it's there in the public domain. So I don't know at what point did he stop taking loans, because even up to now, we are still just adding more debts and more debts. We just need to put our priorities right. It is that plain.
Now, what can be done? I'll start with you, Sir Charles. What can be done to really ensure that these public servants are paid? Because now the government is saying that they should brace themselves for there's a crisis, and maybe they'll get their salary come next week. There could be two options. That is the government defaulting from paying these loans, or rather, still paying these loans at the expense of now having to make these public servants wait. All right, we have countries like Zambia, Ghana, and Mali who defaulted in paying loans. What's the way for Kenya?
But when they defaulted, some of the assets that they pledged.
Have we defaulted?
No, we have not defaulted. But when they defaulted, those countries, you could hear a country like, was it that their port was almost taken away? You see, but my thinking is different. First, we just need to handle the corruption. Because as we speak now, if you check, some might call it rumors and all that, but even our own revenue collection, we have an issue in that place. We have guys at the helm of that position that the stories are out there that the way they are handling, the way they are doing their things are not correct. And those are the loopholes that if you don't block, we will still be having all these problems. Because for as long as I'm paying my tax, and then that tax is not doing what it's intended to do, it's just going into somebody else's pocket, believe me, we'll be having this conversation on and on and on. Even if you call us every day here, we'll just be talking about the same thing. So the major thing I think we should just, if they can just block, just do away, deal with the corrupt, the loopholes that are there. If they can deal with those loopholes so that at least we can get, when you pay taxes, you get services. That will be the first step before we even go to the details of those other kizungu mingi and everything that they talk about every time.
Yeah. I want to still stick to you. You mentioned something when you were starting about government removing subsidies as a reason, one of the reasons as to why the government is finding it hard to pay civil servants. Now, today, the president said that he's looking forward to subsidizing production as compared to subsidizing consumption. So what's your take? Kindly, what's your view on that? How will the common Mwananchi benefit from when this production is subsidized and consumption is not subsidized?
You see, my thinking is first, when we had the subsidies, before we even go to what you just said, when we had those subsidies, example now like the fuel. The fuel, when the previous president was paying the subsidies, the fuel was at 120, right? So you find that there were all the production, everything that you are talking about were being taken care of, as much as the current government complained that that money was going to a few people's pocket. But if you see, the effect was widespread. So I still feel, as much as you might say that he might say that he needs the productive parts to be subsidized, I think if he just accept, the current government came into power with more like grudge and vengeance. That I won't do this thing the way they were doing it. So whether it was the right thing or the wrong thing, they just want to do things their own way. But if you look at it at a glance, you just see that it's like they are just reversing back to all those things that they stopped. That is just my feeling. That's my feeling. Because I see, like, now if I was watching news today, like the Dagoretti MP was saying that we were spending too much money on things like changing the constitution, things like the BBI. But if you see the way the government is running their things now, it's more like they're introducing those things through the back door. Most of the things that they were complaining that the Uhuru government was trying to put in place, they complained about it, but as if you can check it well, that's the same thing they're doing now. It's like they're trying to do it, but wanaona higher. They don't want to come out clear and say that I was wrong, you are right. Yeah.
Right now, Kelvin.
Yes.
Let's now still talk about debt borrowing.
Yes.
Now, the government says it's prioritizing paying its debts fast.
Yes.
It's on record, the government.
Yes.
It borrowed in its first 3 months in office around 137 billion Kenya shillings. Now, if the government is borrowing, and now it's focusing on paying its debts, how will we pay these debts and pay the public servants at the same time?
The issue of the government borrowing, it is not that the government is totally not borrowing. So, because at the end of the day, you need to survive for tomorrow.
So we need to borrow?
We need to sustain ourselves for tomorrow. Because there is no way we can collapse as a government just because we don't want to do something. What the president and the government is trying to say, it is, let us not do it to a given extent. Okay. Let us do what needs to be done instantly. Let us not just borrow. When I hear such as talking about subsidies, we are already in debt. If we don't borrow, we cannot even pay our civil servants. And then you want us to still give people subsidies. No, when you give subsidies, that means the government is catering for a given percentage of the price in a commodity. Yeah? When you say that you now want the government to continue with that, how will you operate? We are not taking more loans. We cannot even sustain our own civil servants. And you still want us to take loans. But what is the government doing? The government has divided itself in short term, middle term, and long term. Short term, it has introduced policies. But if you go right now to your local supermarket, you'll find out that the price of the price of maize flour and the price of rice is quite affordable. Why? Because the government introduced a policy whereby importers of those basic commodities, they are not paying tax. They are importing free tax. And therefore, these commodities have lowered. But again, will they be doing that every day, every month, every year? No. What does the government do? When the government says it wants to focus on the manufacture and the produce sector, it basically means, other than introducing subsidy on maize flour, why can't we introduce subsidy on the fertilizer so that our own people can grow that maize and sell it? All right? Other than, let us not just focus on what is on the table. Why can't we go to the store and see what we can do to produce more? And that is what the government has done. It has already introduced subsidies fertilizers at around 3,500, right? Long term. The president, I think 5 days ago, was in Kwale launching a dam, 25 billion worth. Why is he doing that? Because at the end of the day, climate is changing, global warming is coming, and therefore we are experiencing short rains as a nation. So what do? We harvest water, we use that for irrigation. And therefore, in a long-term basis, we are going to sustain ourselves as a nation in terms of consumption, because basically it starts from there. I need to eat. That is the basic. Before I even think of traveling, think of investing, think of anything else, I first of all need to eat. We start from there.
Right, so you recommend that Kenyans should wait, civil servants should wait?
I recommend that because at the end of the day, let me tell you.
How long?
Just wait. The issue of how long, let me tell you. You cannot get a baby 4 months by impregnating 9 women. You cannot say because it will take 9 months to get a baby, let us impregnate 9 women for 1 month. Because at the end of the day, the mess that it is there, it is a continuous mess that has been there. If you go and check the record at where former President Moi Kibaki left this economy, the debt level, if you inquire how much the previous regime has extended the borrowing ceiling, it is quite, Kibaki left it at around, if I'm not wrong, almost 1 trillion, right? When the previous regime was getting out of the government, the debt was around 12 trillion. We need to clear all that mess. Is it possible to clear a mess that has been happening maybe in the last 6, 7, 8 years with 9 months? Actually, it is not even a year.
All right, now let's put that aside a little bit. Let's now talk about the bipartisan approach. Now, Kenya Kwanza has selected its 7-member committee today. Azimio selected its 7-member committee last week. But today, the Kenya Kwanza committee says, led by Ndindi Nyoro, he says only the reconstitution of IEBC will be discussed among the demands Azimio placed on the table. What happens to these other demands? The cost of living, the servers, all other, the reconstitution of IEBC is the one that is going to be discussed, right? So what happens to these other demands? Are these talks going to be effective?
The issue of whether the talk will be effective, it depends on the opposition, because when retired Prime Minister called people for maandamano, he said the maandamano because the cost of living is quite high. The issue of server and electoral commission came up later.
No.
Just a minute. Just a minute.
This is a national
In the priority. I'm just talking on the priority. Yeah? When Raila called for Mandamano, the basic thing that he was chanting is the price of commodities have gone up.
Yeah.
And then server followed, and then the issue of commissioner followed in that order, if I'm not wrong. Right? But then, when he came out to address, he started with the issue of server, the issue of IBC electoral, and then the issue of cost of living. The issue of the server, he is on record saying that he will accept the results before the election. Then he lost the election. He then said, I will accept the ruling of Supreme Court. And the ruling was made. I believe, as a patriotic citizen of this nation, he is supposed to respect the decision and the ruling of the highest court of this nation. So I don't know why he is so much obsessed with the issue of server, and they never raised the issue during the...
Now, but let's say this, Kenyans went to the streets not for IEBC, for the cost of living.
Yes.
But now the talks are not going to be centered on what Kenyans need to hear.
Because, as I said, the opposition has a tendency of assuming the policies that the government and the measures that the government is taking. If, for instance, I tell you the government have set aside around 2 billion Kenyan shillings to cater for people who cannot afford food, for relief food. The government have also ensured that students and pupils in schools are getting food from the areas that they are quite been hit by hunger. The government also is on record, as I had told you earlier, coming out and telling traders, we are not going to tax you on the import you are making on basic commodities. If you look at the price of unga right now, I believe it's around 100 and maybe, I mean, it's lower than during the previous regime. I ask one question.
Really? During the previous regime?
Okay.
You know,
By how much?
it is not right to not say the truth.
Okay.
Yeah, sometimes it's just good to call a spade a spade.
Okay.
Let him
When-
A spade is, I believe, last year at around July, before the subsidy, you know what the government did? They introduced subsidies to almost 3 months to election, right? Unga subsidies. Am I right or wrong? I'm right? The subsidies that they were funding with the loans that we are saying they are not sustainable. Yes. The problem with one major problem and issue I have with the opposition, they are saying the price of unga must be 100. Ask them, other than subsidy, give us another formula to make it 100. They don't have.
All right, now, Sir Charles, Calvin is saying whether or not this conversation is going to be effective, the bipartisan talk. Now, the buck stops with the opposition. What's your take on that?
First, I need to make some clarifications. When Honorable Raila Amolo Odinga called for the Mandamano, he gave out a list of demands. He never said that this is number 1 or 2 or 3. He said, I'm having a 9-point agenda. So for my friend to say that it was this and this, then all of a sudden it became this, that's not being honest. That is one. 2, when President Uhuru was leaving office, to us, unga was 100 shillings. Fuel was 120. Generally, the things that we were having issues now with, like things like electricity. If you buy an electricity worth 1,000, you are given 60 units. Now with 1,000, you are given 38. When he left, you see, whether you complain these things were right or wrong, but at least Kenyans were cushioned. Now people are suffering, you know. And if I may respond politically a bit, some of these issues that we are having is like nature. Nature is just beating Mr. Ruto. The reason why I say so is one of the reasons that Mr. Ruto gave to remove Raila Odinga in Rift Valley was about the Mau forest. Mau Forest, Raila Odinga said that you guys, if you don't stop cutting these trees, we are going to have problems in the future. It is on record. Mr. William Samuel Ruto said that nini mbaya na huyu jamaa, nani hajui mvua inatoka juu? Nani hajui? So now he is the president. He expect to give us subsidies on fertilizer. Then he expect us to go and plant. Then he expect us the rain to come. Yet it is him who spearheaded the cutting of trees of Mau Forest. And Mau Forest, you know, where is one of the largest source of our rainfall in this country. So some of the problems we are having, if you just check your history, it's like also nature is just against our guy.
All right. Now, what are these conversations going to be effective?
Majority of Kenyans are crying that if the cost of living can be brought down. And that's why I keep saying, if you introduce these subsidies, I feel for as long as it is subsidized and the Kenyans are cushioned, things are going to be okay. But now they are saying that these talks won't take, they are not going to discuss about that. It leaves us in a limbo. Even if you check the list that the Kenya Kwanza gave today, I feel that they are not even serious with the argument. If you check the both teams, I just feel there's wacha waende wangangane.
All right, now in the interest of time, I'll give Kelvin to close for us the discussion from your point of view. Now, are they going to be effective? You didn't answer that question. From your point of view.
Yes. They said the government is willing to engage the opposition, and the opposition from where I stand, it's willing to engage the government.
The opposition is willing?
Yes. But I'm saying the issue would be the meeting point of opposition and the government of the day. Because the government of the day feels as if some of these things are just a repetition. The issue of server, that was an issue that was addressed immediately after the election. Guys, both teams went to Supreme Court and a ruling was made.
But the issue was never addressed. The server was never opened. That's
right.
He needs to say it, you know.
Yes, the server was never opened. I don't disagree with that. You see. But now the major question would be the issue of server. And there is the issue. It was addressed by the Supreme Court. Whether the Supreme Court agreed that it should not be opened or it should be opened, I believe as patriotic Kenya, we should lead other Kenyans in respecting the rule of court. Because if I happen to have a case in my high court and I feel that the case and how the ruling went, it should not be that, I decide to take to the streets, then everybody, or maybe half of the nation would be on the road, striking and causing mayhem.
All right, gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. We have come to the end of our discussion tonight. But remember, this is not the end of For You, our dear viewer. We can continue this conversation on our social media platforms.